Now, our laser-like focus remains, as always, start of every single show while we talk about lots of different things. It's about cost of living, inflation. Because I don't know about you. Yes, well, there are a few chats about ScoMo this weekend, you betcha. But it's very quickly followed up with, hang on, how much does this cost? Why is this going? Can you please explain what's happening with Albo and the power prices? Remember, even in The Guardian, their polling company, the Essential One and the Turnbull Times, shows that 88% of Australians are worried about inflation. That's why it leads our show every single night. Because it matters and it's what's happening in your real world. Remember, 44% of people are very concerned, 40% are somewhat concerned. Put them together, that's how you get to your 88. So let's get to some stories about how tough people are doing it in Australia tonight while the bubble talks amongst itself. It's a family in Cessnock, not too far from Newcastle in New South Wales. These people are in real trouble. They're in real trouble both financially but also because there's nowhere to rent at the moment. So much so that this family that was living in a hotel, all of the people who work in the hotel, and remember how little you get paid to clean a bedroom in a hotel, can often be only $12 a room, and you only get paid by how many rooms they have. Well, they all got together and they used their vouchers that were given to them by the New South Wales government to pool so this family could stay in place for another few nights. That's the reality. The mum, Charmaine, says, I don't know where we will go. I only have 5 days left of temporary housing. So many of the workers went into bat for me. That's what happens in our society. That's how many people are right on the edge. And there's lots of different issues around all of this, but strength and love to her family. Meantime, the GoFundMe platform that we've promoted many a time to raise money for all sorts of serious issues, well, they are spending an awful lot of their time facilitating people raising money so they can keep their lives going. Think about that. Australians begging other Australians for donations to keep the lights on, to keep their kids fed. Well, according to this, there's been a 183% increase year on year in the number of fundraisers launched on GoFundMe that mention words like rental relief, rent payments, relocation costs, housing costs, rental crisis, with a third of these going live in the past 90 days. That's what's happening in Australia right now. That's what should be your lead story about the number of people that are under pressure. And under pressure because everything goes up through no fault of their own. These people could be on welfare, could be off welfare, could have a job, could not have a job, but it doesn't matter. Your spending power for every dollar you earn is back to 2008 levels, and real wages are back to 2011 levels. Wasn't something supposed to happen by now? Oh, no, we'll get back to you. We've got games to play for the next few weeks just to try to stretch it out until the budget comes around in October. Meantime, according to that website of GoFundMe, fundraisers mentioning the cost of living, rising living costs, costs of food and interest rates have gone up 151% year on year. That's the serious end. The silly end, but still you'll notice, schnitties are going up. If you love a good counter meal like I do, this will be noticed in the next little while. And things are different in regional Australia as opposed to the capital cities. You know that because if you're watching us on Sky News Regional, thanks Scoop, you may be saying at the TV. But for everyone else in the capital cities, pay attention because it is more expensive to live in Geelong than it is in Melbourne when it comes to cost of living and inflation. Have a look at this. From their local paper, Geelong's cost of living increase has been 4.8%. That's their inflation compared to Melbourne's 4.3%. So things are going up faster in Geelong than they are in Melbourne. Nothing to see here, though. Meantime, a bloke who runs the Drysdale Family Support Organisation, this is an organisation that runs community-based help. The pastor said this to the newspapers this weekend. We're seeing pensioners, some people who own their own homes, stretch beyond their fortnightly allowance. Others hit by rent rises earlier this year. They're all finding it hard to cover the rising cost of food and petrol. Yet what did Twitter care about? What did the Prime Minister care about? Oh, shock horror. Scott Morrison is laughing at himself, posting memes of him taking other people's jobs. You know, like that democracy-shaking reserve powers that were given by himself to himself during the height of the pandemic. How dare he post these jokes? The Prime Minister, of course, wasn't asked about anything to do with the cost of living a couple of days ago. Well, he was just keeping the focus where it matters, not on the family that are getting donations to stay in a hotel Or the people in Geelong whose cost of living is going up greater than it is Melbourne. No, 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 no. How dare Scott Morrison make a joke of this January 6-like situation?
This undermining of our parliamentary system of government, of the whole Westminster system, and our democratic traditions of accountability are something that aren't a laughing matter. And I'm surprised at the response of Mr Morrison to this. But then again, I frankly was shocked by the revelations that he not only was Prime Minister but took over responsibility or shared responsibility for 5 different portfolios as well, including Treasury and Finance and Home Affairs and Health and Industry, Science, Resources and Energy.
Get over it. Look, we get what this was, we know what this is, and the idea that this is going to go on and on and on for another week, because every day we're talking about this, we're not talking about everything that I just mentioned in the first 5 minutes of the show. We're not helping anyone in real pain. We are just furthering political pain to a bloke you have already beaten. That according to the Canberra types, the Liberals can never win again. Now, as you know, Scott Morrison gave his press conference where the media wanted him to give answers, explanations. He gave them. They didn't like them. And the Canberra Gallery, desperate to fill this week before Parliament goes back with yet another week of this stuff, because it's just so easier than talking about any of the stuff that we just mentioned. It's easier than dealing with any of the problems that are actually happening in your life. They are still writing why Australia cannot simply move on from Scott Morrison's many ministries. I know. I don't know about you, but it's going to be like when Princess Diana died. Where were you when you heard about ScoMo's extra jobs? There'll be a minute's silence every year when the report was first leaked via a book in the Australian newspaper. So their focus after ScoMo is, of course, to go after the Governor-General, because this is a way of, see, they're very clever, right, these people. Very clever. Because they want a republic to happen sooner rather than later, let's make it seem like there's something really dodgy about the Queen's representative in this country. We've seen this play multiple times before. When you want to take down an institution, you undermine the institution. How do? You criminalise or scandalise the actions of that institution. That's what they're trying to play at here. Now, apparently, the Governor-General's public diary did not have any reference to the multiple times that ScoMo and him swapped letters to give him reserve powers during a pandemic, of which he used once and announced it publicly. Now, of course, what did I say? You have a Prime Minister wanting to change the subject, not dealing with the fact that he is the Prime Minister, not the opposition leader. He beat this guy months ago, apparently because there was a cost of living crisis, one that they're not doing anything about until October, maybe. And even then, they think it's going to keep getting worse until the middle of 2024. The people who said that they were going to cut your power bills by $275, but they've gone up, 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 and will go even further higher because of the direct decisions of this government. But don't worry. Let's talk about the former bloke. Now, part of the dog and pony show of the next few days is, despite the fact that there isn't a single public legal opinion that anything was illegal here, we have to wait for tomorrow for the Prime Minister to officially announce that nothing illegal happened here. You see, that way he can soak up another day talking about this rather than any of the stuff that I've just mentioned in the first 10 minutes of the show.
I haven't seen yet a suggestion that anything illegal has happened, but what is very clear is that conventions have been overturned completely and ignored, and the Westminster system of our democracy has been undermined by the decisions that were made by the former Prime Minister.
From that, it sounds like it's at least possible to you, the Solicitor General come back and say, look, it's legal. If he finds it's legal, will you consider a fuller inquiry, or what will be your action then, or will you just leave it at that point?
I'm not going to preempt the advice that we receive, but very clearly there's a need for proper scrutiny of what occurred here.
Obviously, there will be another inquiry. They'll try and squeeze it as hard as they can to get it up to a Royal Commission, because remember, it's revenge for the Royal Commission into the union movement, which Bill Shorten had to give evidence at, and it's revenge for the Royal Commission into the pig bats fiasco that Kevin Rudd had to give evidence at. You see, we have to square the ledger. We have to change the subject. We have to undermine the institution because we want to achieve a change in the way that our government works. You know, keep it all at the vibe level. Meantime, I'm with Barnaby Joyce. Went on Insiders this morning, answered a couple of questions, but wasn't going to talk about this all day, every day.
There's a little bit of hyperventilation coming into this, and I understand the Insiders as a political program is focused on it, but they're not focused on this at the checkout at IGA, and they're probably more focused that Mr. Bowen has changed the laws on vehicle standards, and now we're going to pay more for four-wheel drives in country areas. That affects them.
Trying to establish why you...
You're not going to go back to this question again, are you?
I am. Why you felt the need to keep this secret. Why shouldn't Parliament, let alone your colleagues, have been told what was going on here?
It wasn't really a secret. The PEP 11 decision was turned over. After this, I know you'll go back to a hyperventilating bench, and the ladies and the blokes at IGA paying for their groceries will still be arguing about other things, and the world will have moved on. Let the Prime Minister of the day today have this sort of opposition and exile approach because it covers up for everything else. Fair enough.